Hello, everyone. Good morning. So let's have a quick daily briefing for today. Just a quick market recap on yesterday's data. Okay, so first things, the claimant count change for UK for the month of May. So previous data was negative 55.8 thousand, and the actual data was negative 92.6K for the claimant count change or jobless claims for the UK for the month of May. Followed by the unemployment rate for UK for the month of April. So previous data was 4.8% and forecasted at 4.7, and release time yesterday 2 p.m. And for the month of April, the unemployment rate was still unchanged at 4.7%. So did not beat the previous data for the following month. And here's the effect for the GBP against the US dollar after the release. So as you can see here, the price of GBP against the dollar went down for 50 pips after the release. So one of the catalysts or one of the main factors that drive the price of the sterling, the reason why it went down is because if the UK jobless claims had its biggest decline since the year of 1996. So that is why the price of the GBP dollar went down for 50 pips after the release. Also, we have the trade balance for Eurozone for the month of April. So previous data was 22.3 billion euro. And release time yesterday rather, was 5 p.m. And for the month of April, trade balance was 10.9 billion euros. So lower than the previous data. But after the release of the data, the price of the euro dollar in particular was actually choppy around the 1.2125 in particular. Also, we have the housing starts for Canada for the month of May. So previous data was 367.4K and forecasted at 270K. And release time last night, 8:15 p.m. And for the housing starts for the month of May for Canada, the actual data was 375.9K for the housing starts. So higher than the forecasted, and it beats the previous data. Next thing is the producer's price index for US for the month of May, month-on-month basis. So previous and forecasted was sitting around the 0.6%. And for the month of May, the actual data was 0.8%. So the PPI for the US for the month of May went up for almost 0.2%, so slightly higher than the previous data and the forecasted. Meanwhile, we also have the retail sales for US as well for the month of May. So previous data was 0.9% and forecasted at negative 0.8%. So the actual data was negative 1.3%. So overall, last night for the US data, it was actually neutral because the retail sales was negative, and we have a positive tone for the producer's price index for the month of May. And for the effect in particular for the USD CAD, neutral effect for the US last night or the US data last night. But to be specific, the USD CAD was actually down 20 pips after the US and the Canada data released. And economic data today, during the Asian session, we have the API or the American Petroleum Institute or weekly crude oil stock. So previous data is negative 2.108 million per barrel and forecasted at 3 million. And release time earlier, 4:30 a.m. in the morning. And for the weekly crude oil stock, it was negative 8.537 million per barrel. So release time 4:30 a.m. and the effect for this data was actually bullish for the crude oil in particular. So after the release, the price of crude oil went up for points went up above the 72.44 per barrel. Aside from the weekly crude oil stock, we also have exports for Japan for the month of May year-on-year basis. So previous data was 38% and forecasted at 51.3, and the release time earlier 7:50 a.m. And for the exports for Japan was 49.6%. So lower than the forecasted, but higher than the previous data. Also, we have the trade balance for Japan for the month of May. So previous data was 253.1 billion yen and forecasted at negative 91.2 billion. And the release time, same thing, 7:50 a.m. And for trade balance for Japan, it was negative 187.1 or 187.1 billion yen for the month of May. But for the dollar yen, after the release of Japan data, as you can see, there's actually no significant effect after the release. So aside from the Asian session, we have to focus on the European session as well. So later at 2 p.m., we have inflation rate for UK year-on-year and month-on-month basis for the month of May. For the US session, we also have to pay attention on the US building permits and housing starts, and also the inflation rate for Canada for the month of May as well, month-on-month basis, later at 8:30 p.m. Also, we have the crude oil inventories later 10:30 p.m. So key products for today. First thing is the GBP against the US dollar. Now, during the Asian session, the current price of the GBP against the dollar is currently around the 1.4079. But overall, if the inflation rate data for UK is beats the previous data in the forecasted, so you might see a upside potential for the GBP against the US dollar. So possible support is 1.4033 and 1.3985, and for resistance 1.4128 and 1.4175 respectively. Last thing is USD against the Canadian dollar. Current price of the CAD or USD CAD rather during the Asian session was around the 1.2179. But however, if the CAD data was better than the previous data and forecasted, so we might see it may limit the upside potential for the USD against the Canadian dollar. So possible support is 1.2136 and 2095, and resistance 1.2210 and 1.2245 respectively. Again, for the European session, we have to focus on the inflation rate for UK, month-on-month basis and year-on-year basis for the month of May, later 2 p.m. And US session, building permits and housing starts, and also the inflation rate for Canada, 8:30 p.m. and then crude oil inventories later at 10:30 p.m. So aside from the US session and European session data, we have to focus for tomorrow morning because the Fed interest rate decision or the US interest rate decision will be released 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. So we have to pay attention to that as well. So my suggestion is, if you have a position that is paired by the dollar, I highly suggest that you have as much as possible secure it before the release, so we can expect that the market will be very volatile after the interest rate decision was actually released for the month of June for the US dollar. All right, so that is all for our daily briefing today. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and have a great day.